Good morning, everybody. My name is Tomasz Jagielski. I'm a PhD student at the doctoral school in the University of Opole. And today I would like to show you my presentation about the Poland security in the face of migrant crisis, of the migration crisis on the Polish border, Polish-Belarusian border. So Poland is under migratory pressure on its border with Belarus, inspired by the services of this country. These actions have a hybrid character, and their aim is to destabilize the situation in the Poland and the European Union. So, despite the fact that Poland has taken appropriate measures to ensure the protection and defense of the border, these events constantly affect the functioning of the state security system. So, the aim of my presentation is to show that the events taking place on the Polish-Belarusian border and the impact and its their impact on the state security. So the second equally important objective is to prove that the migration crisis has become permanent. Objectives formulated in this way make it possible to analyze both the factors causing the crisis situation and to examine the functioning of the Polish system in the context of this situation. So firstly, about some things about the diplomatic relation between Poland and Belarus. So diplomatic relation between these two countries were established on the 2nd March 1992. Poland was one of the first countries to which recognized the independence of Belarus. So diplomatic relation between these two countries have been very uncertain from the beginning. In 2096, the internal situation in Belarus worsened. The restriction of civil liberties seriously affected the Poles living in Belarus. So new problems in mutual relation were related to the adoption of the accession treaty. It required Poland to introduce visas for Belarusian citizens, which involved high financial cost when crossing the border. Moreover, after the Orange Revolution at the end of 2004, Lukashenko's regime further intensificate repression against the opposition, the media, and independent associations, including one of the most numerous organizations, the Union of Poles in Belarus. So state relations are seriously weakened by the use of the history for political purposes by the Belarusian authorities. So Belarus' historical policy is subject to manipulation, and the latest attempts to demonstrate the negative influence of Poland and Poles on the history of these two countries are present in the political tactics of Belarusian authorities. So what is the reasons for the start of the migration crisis? So we have to now talk about the presidential election in Belarus in 1994, which resulted in Alexander Lukashenko taking the office of president, where first and last election. The strategy of so-called critical dialogue is an open criticism of anti-democratic action of Lukashenko regime and downgrading of mutual relations without leading to the complete suspension out of the fear of complete domination of Belarus by Russia. So the concept adopted in this form was to focus on protecting the right of the Polish minority and Polish economic interest considered by independent observers. After the last presidential election in 2020, Lukashenko was accused of falsifying the results and that the security forces committed serious human rights violation in response to peaceful demonstrations. So this policy includes forcing an emergency landing of passenger plane in Minsk in 2021. So the official reason for bringing the plane in was an alleged bomb threat, while the main reason was the arrest of specific passenger Belarusian journalists, opposition and bloggers whom the authorities consider an extremist. In light of these events, the European Union began to impose a package of sanctions of Belarus. Initially, the sanction list included individuals and entities subject to asset freezes, then a ban Belarusian carriers flying through European Union airspace and access to European Union airports. So the sectors of the Belarusian economy included the petrochemical, refining, financial and telecommunication industries. Additionally, sanctions were imposed on the arms sector and so-called dual-use goods. Those can be used in both the civilian and military sector. In response to this sanction, Lukashenko began an operation to bring citizens from Asian and African countries to Belarus, tempted by the promise and assistance in easy access to Western Europe country. And the second main thing is that Lukashenko used the migration crisis as a form of pressure on the European Union after imposing sanction for the fraudulently presidential election in 2020 and the repression of the opposition in Belarus. So the flow of migrants is very important part of this topic, because in order to bring migrants to the borders of Belarus with the European Union countries, the Lukashenko regime used the sluice operation developed in 2010 and 2011 by the leads of the KGB and the special unit of the border troops. So the operation at the time to force the flow of migrants across the European Union border was intended to force the organization to provide financial assistance in sailing the Belarusian border. The goal was achieved, and the government in Minsk received tens of millions of euros. Since the plan provide effective, it was used today, shortly after the incident with the plane landing in Minsk. Requirement of volunteers took on a wide-ranging disinformation campaign consisting of convincing potential migrants about the ease of crossing the border with Lithuania and continuing their journey through Poland to Germany and other European Union countries. So the smuggling mafia, cooperating with the Belarusian services, claimed that it was providing guarantees that this route was safe, and the message was to be authenticated by videos of migrants who legally managed to reach their destination without any problems. So the operation was accompanied by a number of supporting activities. Arabic speaking groups exchanged instruction and benefits on social media forums like Facebook or Telegram. So regular flights from Istanbul and Dubai began to handle a large part of transition from Iraq. Character flights from Damascus to Minsk were also activate. So the migrants from Iraq were taken off by the state-owned company, subordinated to Lukashenko and cooperating with Iraq travel agencies. It sold migrants a tourist package for $3,000 to $5,000, including flights, visa fees, accommodation in a Minsk hotel, and transport to the border. GPS coordinates and a guide service were offered for an additional fee. After landing in Minsk, the services took them to the hotels where they were registered, and then usually at night transported toward the border. Initially, the migrants were direct to the territory of Lithuania, but after the Lithuanian authorities announced that people crossing illegally were beginning to turn it back to the border, the migrants were directed to the roads leading to the borders with Poland and Latvia, and letting migrants pass toward the Polish border and preventing them from returning to Belarus was therefore not a completely deliberate attack, but the consequences of the Lithuanians' effective blockade on the border. So the vast majority of migrants came from Iraq and had an economic motivation, but there was also large groups that could be refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, and African countries. It's worth emphasizing that no one registered on or identified the migrants. Since the beginning of the migration pressure, Belarusian and Russian state media have actively participated in a wide range of disinformation and propaganda activities against Poland, the European Union, and the NATO state. So Poland is presented as an unreliable country, posing as a threat to the integrity and subjectivity of Belarus, provoking threats in Europe. Threats from Lukashenko himself have become common in the Belarusian media, as exemplified by his promise to turn off the gas tap to Poland in the face of new sanctions for the border crisis. Another message focused on the attempts to discredit the Polish border services. Firstly, it was reported that these services were unable to cope with the border control, and secondly, they behaved in an inhuman way towards refugees. This was an accompaniment by shocking the drama of the situation and the wrongs they suffered at the hands of the Polish services. So, several main motivates for the information warfare against Poland can be noted in a propaganda publication. So, first, Poland and NATO are planning a military intervention in Belarus. The purpose of this publication is to scale the situation around Belarus, to scare people with a possible armed conflict, to anxiety in Polish society, and distrust of decision making, to undermine Poland's credibility on the international stage. So, second, Poland interference in the internal affairs of Belarus, and it's the instigator of protests. So, the purpose of this publication is to stimulate anti-Polish sentiments in Belarus, to attempt to demonstrate that the situation in Belarus is inspired from the outside. And the third thing is about to denigrate Poland on the international stage. So these publications are focused on the following purposes: that to undermine the credibility of Poland and NATO member states, to weaken Poland's image on the international stage, or to show information chaos in Poland and allied countries, to fuel Poles' distrust of their own country's authorities. So the narrative was accompanied by provocate actions by the Belarusian service, indicating that the aim was to provoke human tragedies on the border and to provoke incidents with the use of weapons in order to demonstrate to the European Union that causing the sanction policy and making consensus to Minsk could lead to an end of the crisis. So this action included, among others, the following events, like supporting migrant attack on the Polish border with the blinding strobe lights and lasers, or recording Polish officers and soldiers. To escalate emotion and raise tension, the Polish national anthem was even played. And second thing, an undefined group of unformed people armed with long guns entered Polish territory from Belarusian at night, thus creating new threats on the border. And the third thing, identify Major General Roman Podliniev in the border zone on the Belarusian side. He is the deputy head of the Belarusian border guards during attacks and assaults by migrants on the Polish border. So the presence of such an important person confirms the scale of the Belarusian services involvement in the conflict, and the fact that this is an operation that goes far beyond organization a migrant road. So to conclude, the artificially created threats from West are aimed at distracting Belarusian from the difficult internal situation, and independent and dependence of the state of the Russian Federation. So the hybrid potential of the Belarusian-Russian operation hasn't been exhausted by the action taken so far. So in view of the effect, protection and defense of the Polish state border, Lukashenko has gained little, which is why Belarus will continue to escalate the conflict with Russia approval. It's important not to succumb to provocation and to be decisive towards illegal migration. So the migration crisis proves the clash of humanitarianism with security. So the latter wins. Because it's threatened on the border with Belarus. So migration should be treated not only as a threat, but also as a challenge. We need to have a vision of what we want. Poland's security and decisive policy towards illegal migration can be ensured and implemented effectively without breaking the foundation of humanization rules. So it's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention.